Hey everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today as I take a deeper look into the most recent episode of Love and Marriage DC, Season 2, Episode 5. I will not be doing a full episode recap. There are plenty of other content creators who do a great job covering the show. Instead, I'm going to focus on specific segments of the episode that I believe can be used as teachable moments for myself and the audience. So the episode starts with continuation from the previous episode where Jamie's daughter, I forgot her name, she has the family come to her house. They're having a conversation or intervention about little Jamie. And they're all concerned about him. And since I started watching this show last year, I stated that I think that Big Jamie loves his family and his children. He has a harsh way and a very strict way of managing his household, but I could tell that he loves his kids. But I think, he spoiled his son. Two things can be correct, right? He loves his children. He could have spoiled them. Little Jamie, I believe, is spoiled, but I also think that he's depressed. You can be spoiled and depressed at the same time. So during the intervention, Big Jamie gives little Jamie an ultimatum saying that if you don't go to therapy with me or counseling with me, you can't stay in the house anymore. Now, mind you, little Jamie is 26 years old, still living with his parents, and his parents are afraid for him. I think that their harsh tone and the fact that they have no patience at this point is not because they don't love their son, it's because they're afraid for him, especially Big Jamie. I can see he is so petrified about his son's future. And I mentioned this last week, a lot of times when men are scared, they become abusive. Okay, they get angry when they're afraid, right? Men don't process fear the same way women do. Women may, step back and they may hide or whatever. They may shut down or, submit. Okay, apologize. Men don't do that. When they feel threatened or when they feel unhappy about something, they tend to go on the warpath, especially someone with Big Jamie's disposition as a detective or police officer. He's taught not to stand down, he's taught not to back away from conflict. So he's taught to attack conflict, right? He was trained in that way, and he was good at his job, apparently, because he was retired after so many years of working. So with little Jamie, I don't know if he's depressed because of his situation, him being 26 with no degree and a criminal record, so he really can't find a decent job that he thinks he should have at this point. I'm not sure if he's depressed because he feels like he failed his parents and can't live up to their expectations as successful role models in the community. I'm not sure if he's depressed because of his own temperament, right? He could have a chemical imbalance, right? Or he could be someone who's naturally predisposed to depression because of genetics, because of environment, because of a lot. But it is very clear to me that he is depressed, especially when he got really defensive when his father was like, we should go to therapy. And if you don't go to therapy, it's because, you're not going to be able to stay in the house. So little Jamie thought that was an attack on him. And from my own experience dealing with depression, when you're in that state, you kind of catastrophize everything, right? So any little bit of criticism or an unpleasant word or an argument, whatever, you can blow those things out of proportion when you're depressed. You think the whole world is against you, right? And with little Jamie, him comparing himself to his siblings who are pretty much okay, right? They're stable, they're independent, and he's the only one still struggling. I can imagine that that's exacerbating his self-esteem issues. I think that he's even more depressed now because he's been compared not only to his parents, but to his siblings who are younger than him. I think his older sister's older, but she's still independent. She's probably been on her feet by herself longer than he has, right? So since she was younger than him, so maybe in her early 20s, she could have got her own place. I don't know. But she's independent. Jason's independent in a sense. He's in a DOORS program with his disability. Now he feels like he's, isolated. That's also a symptom of depression. Isolation, hypersensitivity, catastrophizing certain things, not having any faith or belief in yourself, low self-esteem, wanting to kill yourself. All of those are symptoms of real depression. So I think that little Jamie is spoiled, but he's also depressed. I think that because he was used to living a certain lifestyle as a child, that's exacerbating his condition too. So he's comparing his life now to what it was, or the potential that he thought he had when he was younger, right? This somebody, grew up in a nice neighborhood, went to good schools, had everything. The world was his oyster. Now here he is older, and his life has not turned out the way he expected. I can imagine that that's also adding to his depression too. So Big Jamie got emotional. The grandma got emotional. The sister got emotional. And Raina was very cool and collected in that situation, which I think is a good counterbalance. I think that she's a bit more emotionally stable than Big Jamie is, which is why they kind of balance each other out. So in Raina, you could tell she loved her son, but her demeanor is a lot more cool, a lot more objective, a lot more airy. And the Big Jamie is a lot more emotional and passionate and fiery. I don't think he could have stayed married to Raina for as long as he has if she were just like him. She's like the opposite of him. She's someone who's she's laid back, and Big Jamie's not. And so I think little Jamie is a lot more like his mother in a sense that he's more laid back and chill, but he could be, again, a sensitive kid who was spoiled, and now he doesn't know what to do with his life because it didn't turn out the way he expected to. So at some point in the episode, they go to this wonderful therapist. I don't know, I forgot his name. I'm sorry. Wonderful therapist. I mean, I loved his tone, his presence, his questioning, his empathy. It was just a wonderful session to see him and his father, Jamie and his father, go to. So little Jamie, just to go back a little bit, little Jamie was convinced to go to the session because his father was like, it's not just about you, I'm going for me too, right? Because little Jamie felt attacked. A lot of people who go through depression feel attacked all the time. And I'm going to say this, okay? I honestly believe, and I told my mom this years ago, over a decade ago, I honestly believe that as a collective, Black people are depressed. As a collective. We've gone through so much trauma as a collective, especially over the past 50, 60 years, that our music is depressing. Our family dynamics are depressing. We have a hard time taking accountability for our actions. We have a hard time listening to critique, honest, constructive criticism, right? We don't take care of our bodies anymore. We engage in self-destructive habits and behaviors. We are drinking too much. We're smoking too much. We're eating too much. We're sleeping too much. We're like in a daze. We're like zombies in our culture, in our community. I'm not talking about individuals, but the culture of Black people in this country is depressed. And I remember reading the biography of Sam Cooke and how thousands and thousands of people in Chicago went to see his body. This was, I believe, in 63 or early 64. I think it was 63 or early 64, I believe. And people were crying. There was a collective sense of grief. When tens of thousands of people are crying at your funeral, that is no longer an individual experience. It's a collective experience for the Black community. I think that his death, and it sounds weird for me to say this, his death kind of set the tone for the next several decades for the Black community because it was so tragic. He was such a beloved public figure, and then right after he died, X died, right? Malcolm X died. And then we had other leaders who were being killed in front of us, and then King died, and then the men came back from Vietnam and they were traumatized, and then the drugs came in, and then the gang violence came in. It was just so much compounded trauma. And Dr. Joy DeGruy talked about this in her post-traumatic slave syndrome conversations that she's discussed for the past 20, 30 years about how Black people pass down trauma. We don't pass down land. We don't pass down money. We don't even pass down knowledge anymore. We pass down trauma more than anything else. And as a collective, I think we need healing. The individual therapy is amazing. I think it's a wonderful step in the right direction. But we also need to heal the culture, because the culture is the mother of the community. If your culture is gone, or you have no culture, that means you have no mother. That means you're a foster child. That means you're nothing. You're abandoned. You're a foster kid, right? Not saying that foster kids who don't have mothers are nothing. I'm not saying that. But if your mother has abandoned you, and you have been adopted by a society that hates you for who you are and what you represent, then we have a huge problem in our community. And a lot more women and men in our community, Black men and women, are going to continue to suffer from depression, not just from individual failures or individual misunderstandings and trauma, but our culture in our community has been ravaged by the drugs, by the violence, by the abandonment, by the poisoning of our people, by this larger society who wants to exterminate us and who has been trying to do this for the past 400 years. Okay, so we have been engaged in a long war, and we don't see it in front of us, it's in our subconscious. So now, when we don't see our enemy in front of us, we blame ourselves, right? The reason why Black men and Black women can't get along is because Black women are too fat. Black men are too lazy. Black men don't like Black women. Black women don't like. So we don't see that there's an enemy behind the scenes pulling the strings. So we start to abuse ourselves, and we blame ourselves for systemic failures, for what you call structural violence. Okay. And yeah, I think that that's partially what Jamie Jr. is going through, because he grew up in a great family and a great, environment, in the sense his father gave him opportunities. But I think he may have been spoiled to the point where now that he's not rising to his full potential that he has, he's also depressed about that too. So anyway, back to the therapist section. The therapist was amazing, and he was a Black male, which I really, 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 really like seeing. I just loved that session. It was amazing. Anyway, so Big Jamie admitted to his flaws, right? He admitted to being too hard on his son. His tone was messed up, and you could tell he loves his child. In the beginning of that session, his son was like turned away from him or turned forward. And towards the end of the session, little Jamie started facing his father. He felt more vulnerable with him. I thought that was an amazing moment between father and son. I also love the fact that the therapist addressed this suicide issue. And little Jamie was like, yeah, a couple of months ago, I felt like if I'm such a big problem, I'll just get rid of myself, right? If I'm such a burden on society, I will get rid of myself. And a lot of people who are depressed deal with that, especially Black men. Over the past decade or so, suicide among Black men has risen to incredible levels, right? We have more freedom, so to speak. We have more money, right? I guess more money, more freedom, but we have less family. We have less community. We have less support systems. We have less culture. We don't have a sense of purpose. We don't feel obligated to anyone but ourselves, okay? So if we don't feel obligated to anyone but ourselves, and we feel like we're not worth anything, then we're going to get rid of ourselves. That's the logic of someone who's depressed, saying, you know what, I'm a burden on society, I'm a burden to my family, I'm not worthy of anything, I shouldn't even be here. That's because that person doesn't know that they have a purpose and a role in society, to their community, to their family, especially in the Black community. Black men have been emasculated, and they have been declawed, and their teeth have been taken out by, multiple systems of oppression, of aggression, of culture poisoning them. A lot of Black men have drug problems now, and women too. The drugs and the alcohol is also exacerbating mental health issues in our community, men and women. This is why I do not support just rampant recreational drug use. I don't. Because on a spiritual level, a lot of us don't know that we're opening portals in our bodies for other entities to affect our thoughts, okay? To affect our emotions, right? And that is why a lot of people who are on drugs or high, they do things that are considered humane. Not all of them. But yeah, a lot of these murder sprees, raping, pedophilia, all that stuff can be linked to drug use, okay? Recreational drug use, alcoholism, all these things. And that's why our ancestors were very keen on not using certain types of drugs, especially alcohol. So anyway, at some point during the session, the therapist asked little Jamie, what can he do to get himself to where he needs to be? Because at some point, he has to take accountability. He has to take control of his life. It's not his father's job to want a successful future for him more than he does. And Jamie said the same thing earlier. He was like, we want this for you more than you do. That is a symptom of someone who's depressed, when they have less love for themselves than the people around them, right? Everybody seems to be more worried about Jamie than him, in a sense of like, so Jamie's worry, little Jamie's worry is internalized. It's more feminine, and it's introverted. So he'll harm himself instead of hurting other people. Now, someone who is depressed and they're more of a masculine personality, they'll end up hurting other people before they hurt themselves. And then at the end of the day, they may hurt themselves too. This is why we have a lot of murder and suicides in our community as well. So somebody killing their spouse and then shooting themselves, something like that, right? That is somebody who projects their anger and their insecurity outward. Some people internalize it like a woman. Women do it internally. And I think little Jamie is more of a feminine personality. Doesn't mean he's gay or nothing like that. I'm not saying that. He's more introverted. He's more feminine in expression. So he's going to engage in self-harming behavior before he hurts somebody else. Another man who's more masculine and more selfish and more aggressive would probably hurt the woman he's dating, right? He would be a domestic abuser. That's a possibility too, when people are dealing with depression, okay? So yeah, the therapist was like, what do you need to do? Because initially little Jamie was like, it's all on him. It's the way he's saying things. No, the way he's saying things is not a problem, right? So, Black people, including myself, we're very sensitive to tone, how people say things. But I'm more interested in what you're saying versus how you're saying it. So if you have the wrong tone and you're wrong, as far as like factually, that's a double whammy for me. Jamie Sr. was correct about his assertions about his son. Not by being a bum, but his son is spoiled and he needs to get it together. Period. He's 26 years old. He's not saying this because he hates his son. He's saying it because he's a grown man. And grown men need to be able to take care of themselves. But little Jamie doesn't know how to do it. And that could be because of the criminal record. It could be because of the drug issues that he's probably had in the past. It could be because of depression. All three of those things combined could be the reason why he's so depressed, right? And yeah, so I don't think that Big Jamie takes it lightly. I think that he's just frustrated and afraid because he doesn't want to deal with the negative consequences of his son being a failure in society. He knows how dangerous that is. So yeah, I'll say this too, just to get into my astrology bag really quickly. I don't know what sign little Jamie is, but water signs manipulate you emotionally. Earth signs manipulate you using their resources. Air signs manipulate you using their words. And fire signs manipulate you with their energy or their activity. For example, this is like an Aries who is like, okay, you don't do what I want you to do. I'm going to hang out with my friends. I'll give my energy to somebody else, right? I'll give my passion to someone else. I won't pay you no mind because you're not doing what I want you to do. That's a fire sign manipulation versus an air sign manipulation is them using their words and their language to get you to do what you want them to do, to make you feel some kind of way about your own positioning and to question yourself about why you're not agreeing with them. Okay, water signs, they use your feelings against you and so on. So yeah, I wonder if little Jamie is like a water sign or something. I'm not sure. But he seems to be, there's a combination of many things. There is depression here, but there could also be manipulation and being spoiled. It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? This is a complicated situation. So I think therapy was the best course of action for the whole family. And I really applaud Jamie Sr. for taking the first steps to like be the leader in this regard. Asking his son to go to therapy and giving him an ultimatum. I think the ultimatum was necessary because honestly, he's at his wit's end. What else is he supposed to do? I think Big Jamie said during the session that his son stole his car when he was 16, right? That's a lot to deal with. And then things kept getting worse and worse and worse. I don't know what happened to little Jamie at 16. They have to really unpack that because it seems like there was a turning point in his life where he started to lash out and rebel against his parents, okay? All right. Now on to Joy and Sherelle, I think her name is. So Sherelle confronts Joy about what Irena said about her husband being shady. And Joy backtracks and backpedals because she's like, oh, I didn't say he was shady. That's not what I said, right? But Irena wasn't telling a lie. Irena basically paraphrased what Joy said. Joy said he was manipulative. He was underhanded and he was untrustworthy. That's shady, right? Irena doesn't have to repeat what Joy said verbatim to not be a liar. She didn't lie about that. But Joy, in my opinion, she threw a rock and hit her hand, because when she was confronted by Sherelle, not only did she backtrack, she was like, yeah, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. As if you didn't say something closely related to that. She didn't even clarify what she said, right? She just let Sherelle get mad for no reason. Then at DJ Quick's event, which I thought was disrespectful, she confronted Irena about what Joy told her. I thought that was tacky and crass. And I don't know if the producers told her to do that, but no, that was not the right place or time to confront Irena about something so insignificant about your husband, okay? And then Joy sat there and let Irena get yelled at and accused of being fake and whatever. And she said nothing. And Joy was like, well, I wasn't going to add to the, fuel to the fire. That sounds good. And I think that was good if that's what she was trying to do. I don't think that was the reason, though. I think that she didn't jump in because she knows she was lying, right? But to be fair, it would not have been a good time for Joy to jump in anyway, because this was somebody else's event. It was a good moment. They didn't want any drama. But that's not why Joy didn't say anything when Irena got confronted. Okay, because Irena pulled up the receipt. She's like, Shady is someone who's untrustworthy, this, that, and the third, right? So why is Sherelle so like gung-ho about the defending her husband from something that someone else said? It's not that serious. I like the fact that the men didn't step in like that, because men usually don't step into women's squabbles because then it escalates. We saw what happened with Martell and Melody and the Scotts and Miss Wanda. Men need to step away when women are fighting each other, unless the woman is in imminent danger. Okay, if she's not in danger, let the women talk it out themselves, because if Big Jamie got involved, then Clifton would have to get involved, and then Sherelle's husband would have to get involved. It would have been more drama. So it's good that the men stepped back and it didn't let things escalate into unnecessary violence and confrontation. Sherelle's husband his nickname is Black. I'm going to say this. I don't like when dark-skinned people are nicknamed Black. I don't like it. And I don't know why he was called Black, probably because he's dark-skinned, but it's like a lot of dark-skinned people are nicknamed Black. Like, that's not, I'm not saying being Black is a bad thing, but I don't know. There's a negative connotation to it, to me. It's like you're only identified by your complexion. The first thing I see is how black you are, how dark you are, right? That's, to me, I don't like that at all. But anyway, yeah, Joy was backpedaling. She instigated it in the sense that she said something negative about this lady's husband and did not back her up when she was confronted. And then she lied about it. Okay? And then in the next episode, I saw like the previews with Ashley and Irena and Joy sitting together. And Joy acted like Sherelle was being crazy for saying what she did. No, Joy is being two-faced. And now she's going to get punked out on TV, basically. One more thing. So at DJ Quick's event, he starts crying about how far he's made it in life. Not having his parents, getting shot in one corner, getting stabbed on another, and now he has a street named after him. That is such a great accomplishment. He's such a source of inspiration for his family. I know Ashley was very proud of him for that honor, and I'm proud of him for that too. He has survived through a lot, okay? And as I mentioned before, men who suffer, one of two things happens. Either they get stronger or they buckle under the pressure and they become depressed and self-destructive. A lot of men who are successful have gone through hell, especially in the Black community. I know a few personally who've gone through hell during their childhoods, okay? And they grew up to be very successful. Now they have other issues because of that trauma, but they've managed to channel that negative energy into something that's productive for themselves and their families. But they need therapy to deal with some of the other self-destructive habits that they've adopted to cope with the trauma that they've experienced as children. But yeah, congrats to DJ Quick for the honors of getting a street named after him. That's awesome. And just to recap again, I really salute Big Jamie for stepping up to the plate and going to counseling and therapy with his son, and not just saying this is your problem, you do this by yourself. I don't think he ever intended to do that. And I honestly have seen fathers who never thought they did anything wrong. one more thing. Now, don't get offended, ladies. Please do not get offended. Please. Okay. I noticed that a lot of Black women who either grew up with no father or an abusive father, they chafe or they cringe or they become combative when they meet a strong, authoritative Black male. I noticed that a lot in our communities. This is one of the reasons why a lot of Black men say that Black women don't like to follow instructions or they're not submissive enough. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. Okay, Black women saw submissive women getting taken advantage of, beaten and abused, and so on. But a lot of it is also because a lot of us were not raised with a father figure in the home. So we don't know how men operate in the home space. A lot of men who are fathers are very dry, cold, hard, rigid, stern, and authoritarian because they're trying to manage and maintain a family. Their energy is different than a mother's energy. A lot of Black women expect fathers to act like they want their mothers to act, right? Nurturing, soft, and warm and patient. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but from my experience and observation, most Black fathers don't act like that. They're very cold, hard, and rigid. It's not out of hatred, but they have a lot to manage. They have a lot to keep on their plate. They're juggling the responsibility of taking care of a household, making sure their wife is happy, their children are happy, the pressures of living in a white supremacist society. Can I lose my job tomorrow? Can I take care of my family, my kids? Will my wife leave me? A lot of pressure. Men don't know how to deal with pressure well, so they become abusive in many instances, especially if they have their own mental health issues, right? But I do think that a lot of Black women were probably triggered by Jamie from what I read in my comment section because they weren't used to seeing strong Black men like that growing up. And this is not an insult to anybody, but a lot of Black girls did not grow up, especially in the 80s and the 90s. They didn't grow up with a father. So this is one of the reasons why we also idolize marriage. We put husbands and marriage and the fantasy of a marriage on a pedestal because we've never seen that growing up. We don't know what a marriage is really like. A lot of us put men on a pedestal because we weren't raised with men. We were raised with children, with our siblings and our mother, and that's it. We don't really see how men operate in the domestic space. And a lot of times it's not pretty at all. It's not. A lot of men become abusive and self-destructive when they feel like they have to be responsible to a family and they're not in control of that responsibility, of how they'll be able to take responsibility for their family. It's almost like you're working for somebody who doesn't like you because you're Black, but you got to keep this job to feed your family. And going through that experience psychologically, that puts a lot of pressure on Black men, and so they kind of become very hard and abusive and difficult to deal with in the home space because they don't feel secure within themselves. So they kind of attack their wives and their children because they don't feel secure about themselves and their position in life, and they're not the masters of their own fate. Somebody else is writing their check to them. If a Black man shows up too aggressive, or he looks at his boss the wrong way, or his boss feels threatened for whatever reason, he may not have his job, right? And so, husbands have a lot of pressure put on them. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of wives file for divorce, because their husbands aren't fun anymore. Their husbands are very controlling, domineering. They don't want to share in their household responsibilities. It's like they become rigid and strict and boring in a sense. Not always, but yeah. And this is fear. This is fear. It's also laziness and entitlement, and also some resentment too. I'll get into that later. But yeah, a lot of Black women were probably triggered by seeing Big Jamie from what I read in my comment section, because they weren't used to seeing a James Evans type figure in 2023, right? A lot of us were not raised with fathers in the home, which is why when a man tells us, oh, you need to lose some weight, or, you need to do something with your hair, we're not used to that level of critique from a man. So we get triggered by that really easily, right? And it could just be constructive criticism. A lot of Black women have a hard time listening to constructive criticism. Black men too, because of the depression I talked about earlier, and the hypersensitivity, and, the sense of feeling worthless So it's like there's one more thing you're adding to the pot. Now, not only am I not worth anything, I'm not attractive, I'm not good enough, I'm not a nice person. So it's like, why am I even here? Let me just eat myself to death, right? Let me just, sleep around with anybody without any regard for my body and my physical health. Forget all that. I'm worth nothing anyway. So I think collectively as a community, not to go all over the place here, but we really need to deal with the depression that has seeped into our culture. We don't dance the same anymore. We barely even dance now. We don't sing the same anymore. We don't laugh the same anymore. We don't feel the same way about children anymore. As a collective, the Black community has shut down their heart chakra, period. All we're doing now is operating from our root chakra. Sex, pleasure, drugs, chasing after money for security because we have no family. Family is supposed to be your primary source of security. Mothers, fathers, sisters, uncles, cousins, brothers, whatever. We used to have tight-knit family units. So we don't have that anymore. Now there's drug abuse. Now there's violence, promiscuity, no money, no culture. We're just wandering in the wilderness and wondering why the depression is going up among Black men and women in our community. Our culture doesn't value family anymore. We don't value children anymore. And children are the future. So if you don't value children, then that means you don't value your future. You don't see a future for yourself in the world or in this country, right? So because you don't see a future for yourself, you're not going to have any babies. 40% of Black men and women don't have any children after the age of 35, I believe. So this is almost like, I don't know, I say this the wrong way. We are low-key committing genocide ourselves because we don't have a connection with children in our future anymore. So the culture and the community that doesn't value children is going to self-destruct. Once children become a burden and not a blessing, you're going to destroy yourself and then wonder why you don't have any political power come election time, because guess what? The cultures and the communities that value family and children, they're outvoting you. They're getting their needs met because they are putting their children first. We stopped doing that in the 50s and 60s. Once we assimilated into whiteness, right? Forget my family, forget my community, forget my culture. All I care about is me now. Individualism versus collectivism. Once you start doing that, you're destroying yourself as a people. You are now committing suicide as a race with the violence, with the drug abuse, with the promiscuity, with the suicide, right? We're doing it to ourselves now. And again, there's a hidden hand behind this, absolutely. But we're the ones taking the drugs. We're the ones not respecting each other. We're the ones not having children because we're waiting for the perfect mate. Black men and Black women are doing this. And a lot of times, our perfect mate is someone who will not hold us accountable for our bad behavior. That is for Black men and Black women. A lot of times, our perfect mate will allow us to do fuck shit and get away with it. That is the perfect mate for many Black men and many Black women. And then compound that with the colorism issues that Black women and Black men have, because a lot of Black women have the same preferences as Black men do too, right? Colorism, racism, economic insecurity or inequality, right? All those things compounded is one of the reasons why as a collective, we will continue to suffer and we will die out into nothingness because again, we have stopped projecting ourselves into the future. And how do you do that? By having children, period. No children, no future. So you may enjoy, not having kids, and everybody's not meant to have children. Everybody's not. But the problem is the culture is anti-children too. So even the children we do have, we don't take care of them well, right? The babies that are here, we don't take care of them. And so now we're like, you know what? I can't find a partner who loves and values children, right? Men and women are saying this. I can't find a partner who puts children first. So I may not have any children because guess what? The culture says children do not come first. The culture says the bag comes first. Pleasure comes first. A big booty comes first. Prostituting yourself comes first. Forget having any responsibilities to anybody. Forget being accountable to anyone. All you are doing is taking care of yourself. You're the only one that matters, right? And a lot of us have gotten that from our parents because our parents did not care about us. They were all about themselves, right? all about their needs, what they wanted. They didn't put their children's needs first. And sometimes they did. But again, the culture does not support that. The culture says that you're supposed to be focused on your individual goals and aspirations. You're going to be the first black this and the only black that, right? That's still the individual accomplishments that we're using as collective achievements, and they're not that. And that is one of the problems that we have. One of the problems. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I look forward to reading your comments. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.